In a total plot twist, I'm actually looking forward to tax season because it's the first time I have Monarch. I love Monarch because it helps me see where my money is going instead of looking back and wondering where the heck it all went. Whatever happens with the IRS this year, Monarch is here to show me where my money is going and where a possible tax refund would have the biggest impact. Monarch is the all-in-one personal finance tool designed to make your life easier. It brings your entire financial life, budgeting, accounts and investments, net worth, and future planning together in one dashboard on your phone or laptop. Feel aware and in control of your finances this tax season and get 50% off your Monarch subscription with code OFFTHECLOCK. In the therapy room, I'm all about helping clients make decisions that actually lead to meaningful change. Monarch does this by giving me a complete financial picture so that my financial decisions are informed by real data. Achieve your financial goals for good with Monarch, the all-in-one tool that makes money management simple. Use code OFFTHECLOCK at monarch.com for half off your first year. That's 50% off at monarch.com, code OFFTHECLOCK.
To me, progress isn't actually body acceptance. Progress to me is that we all leave each other the hell alone. That we just let adults make decisions about their bodies that are the right decisions for them, and we support them in those decisions.
That was Jill Stoddard on Psychologists Off the Clock.
We are 5 experts in psychology here to bring you cutting-edge and science-based ideas to help you flourish in your relationships, work, and health.
I'm Dr. Debbie Sorensen, a clinical psychologist practicing in Mile High, Denver, Colorado, author of Act for Burnout and Act Daily Journal.
From America's Heartland, I'm Dr. Emily Edlin, a clinical psychologist based in Chicago, Illinois, and author of Autonomy Supportive Parenting.
Calling in from Vienna, Austria, I'm Michael Herold, ACT coach, confidence trainer, and the author of an upcoming book on developing your confidence and social skills.
From Boston, I'm Dr. Yael Schoenbrunn, faculty at Brown University and author of Work, Parent, Thrive, and an upcoming book about misunderstanding.
And from coastal New England, I'm Dr. Jill Stoddard, author of Be Mighty, The Big Book of ACT Metaphors, and Imposter No More.
We hope you take what you learn here to build a rich and meaningful life.
Thank you for listening to Psychologists Off the Clock.
Hey listeners, just a super quick reminder that you can listen to the podcast ad-free by supporting us on Patreon for just $5 a month. Or you can support the podcast with a one-time donation on Buy Me a Coffee. Thank you to everyone who's already supporting us.
Hi, everyone. It's Emily, and I am here today with Jill to present a very special episode that I think is going to be really interesting for the listeners. And that is, we're very aware as a podcast that we are swimming in the waters right now of a topic that we have actually tried to not align ourselves with because it's so loaded. And that is the whole weight loss, weight management trends going on right now with the pervasive use now of GLP-1s, for example, and really stunning weight loss in celebrities. It's really all around us in a way that hasn't really been true before. And we actually have made decisions on our podcast to not align ourselves with sponsors of weight loss products because it's so complex. And we want to be really sensitive to this topic in a way that we are aware of the social and cultural messaging that can be so complicated, as well as what it's like for an individual struggling with their weight. And so it's bridging the individual experience with the layers of all the influences on that experience. And we want to devote some time to that. And Jill has bravely offered to talk about her personal experience with life after weight loss. And we are going to talk a little bit about what Jill has gone through, how she has made meaning of it. And she has some great ideas for anyone else that this story resonates with.
Yeah, I think it's something that in a way we've almost treated like a dirty word, a dirty little secret. We need to stay away from all things related to food and weight loss especially, and body image. And I think I sort of came to the conclusion that that's kind of silly because this is something that affects so many of us. And we know, at least last time I checked, this stat might not be up to date, but 1 in 8 adults is taking a weight loss medication. Over 200,000 people in the US have weight loss surgery every single year. And when I started talking about these things, almost every person I talk to either says, oh yeah, I'm doing that too, or my mother did that, or my aunt did that. I mean, I think you'd be stunned at just how common an experience this is. But then there's all this weird shame around it. And so what I really wanted to do is kind of like break stigma, break shame. Like, let's just talk openly about what's happening right now and do it in a way like I want to own it. I feel really proud of my experience and my journey. And I'll tell you my story, but I have kept off of very large weight loss for 5 years. And of course, the maintenance is the hardest part. And I thought, gosh, we have this platform that like I can share the strategies that have worked for me. And we probably have loads of listeners for whom this applies, but maybe aren't talking about it and could really benefit from my experience.
Or therapists, mental health providers working with clients who are on this journey and may need to feel more equipped with how to best support their clients as well.
Great point.
Yeah. So where do you want to start, Jill, with your personal story?
Yeah, well, I guess I'll share a story that I think anyone who's struggled with their weight is going to nod along and go, yep, me too, at least for part of it. But growing up, probably starting sometime in like late elementary school, my parents used to call me Tubby, little Tubbette, Tubby 2x4 who couldn't fit through the kitchen door, which I'm sure you can imagine led to a lifetime of food and body image issues. And, you know, I can remember standing in this particular doorway in my house where I could see outside the window, but like outside people wouldn't be able to see me. And I would stand in that spot and sneak eat ice cream so that I could see if my parents came home so I could put it away really quickly because there was so much shame. Like if I went to go get a snack in view of my parents, they would go, Tubby, and this like very shamey voice. And so I would restrict when anyone was watching and then sneak eat when anyone wasn't watching. And so I went on to eventually develop a weight problem. The funny thing is, I wasn't actually Tubby when my parents were calling me Tubby, but I became Tubby eventually. And so basically I did the, I think, very common thing of yo-yo dieting, losing weight and then gaining it all back and then some, losing weight, gaining it all back and then some. And we know from the data, I think it's something like 98% of diets fail. And that because of the way our metabolism and biology work, it is very common to not just gain the weight back, but to gain it back and then some. And so I was miserable. I mean, and then during COVID, because it was just so emotionally challenging and we weren't moving, you know, we were like home all the time, I gained a lot more weight. And I was miserable, and not just because of the way I looked and living in a society where it's very clear we're supposed to look a certain way and not look another way, but like just walking up the stairs was hard for me. I would be out of breath, you know, doing minor things. I would try to exercise and then I would be so hard on myself. Like, why are you so lazy? Just go exercise. But it felt like torture because it's very hard to move your body cardiovascularly when you're carrying around a lot of extra weight. So anyway, one day I was in a therapy session with a client who, you know, he was depressed and anxious. We weren't talking about anything related to weight, but he happened to tell me this story that he had gone to see his doctor and the doctor suggested he get bariatric surgery. And I'm admitting out loud that I got a little distracted for a second. I kind of stopped listening to him because in my mind I went, wait, he's too skinny for bariatric surgery. And it was this like aha moment where I was like, wait a minute, if he's a bariatric surgery candidate, is it possible that I might be too? So I got present again and got back to being a good therapist, not thinking about my own weight. But, you know, as soon as we finished our session, I just did this deep dive. I read 3 books in 3 weeks. I learned everything I possibly could and determined that, yes, indeed, this actually was an option for me. So in March of 2021, I had gastric bypass surgery. I lost 90 pounds and have now kept, like I said, I've kept that weight off for 5 years. And it was the best thing I could have done for myself. My high cholesterol was normal within 1 month.
Wow.
I was someone who hated exercise my whole life. Now I love it. I work out, probably 5 days a week, most weeks, and have been doing that consistently since I lost the weight because it no longer feels like torture.
That's what I was going to ask, is what feels different to you about the exercise, do you think?
It's easy. I mean, it's a little challenging in the way exercise is supposed to be challenging, but truly, Emily, like when I was bigger, it felt like torture. It felt impossible. I mean, imagine if walking up the stairs is hard and makes you winded. Imagine trying to run a couple miles or, do anything really. And so now it is like one of my great joys. I schedule it into my calendar. It is a non-negotiable for me. And I'm like as shocked as anyone at how much I actually enjoy it.
Here at Psychologists Off the Clock, we know that regular workouts are good for mental health. What the research conspicuously fails to address, however, is the outfit question. As in, does the psychological benefit hold if you're wearing sad, stretched-out leggings from 2016? Since the literature is silent on this, let's fill in the gap. Cute workout gear matters, which is where Fabletics comes in. Fabletics pieces feel like the kind of activewear you'd see with other high brands, but for a fraction of the price. What might be especially cool for many of our listeners is that the membership also gives you access to Fabletics scrubs. They just launched a collaboration with Nurse John, and if you work in healthcare or know somebody who does, new VIPs can get a full scrub set for just $15. The scrubs are made with durable, water-repellent fabrics, so spills just roll right off and feel far more breathable and flexible than premium scrubs without the premium price tag. Same activewear quality, just built for long days on your feet. Fabletics is one of the brands that once you try it, you get it. The value, the styles, the flexibility, that's the appeal of Fabletics. Fabletics already has incredible deals, and I've got an exclusive offer just for Psychologists Off the Clock listeners. Get 80% off everything when you sign up as a VIP. Just head to fabletics.com/POTC, take a quick style quiz, and be sure to select POTC when prompted to unlock your 80% off. That's fabletics.com/POTC.
I don't know about you, but I like keeping my money where I can see it. Unfortunately, traditional big wireless carriers also seem to like keeping people's money. So if you're fed up with overpaying for wireless with bogus fees and so-called free perks that actually cost more in the long run, it's time to switch to Mint Mobile. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at just $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest high-quality 5G network. So if you like your money, Mint Mobile is for you. Shop plans at mintmobile.com/POTC. That's mintmobile.com/POTC. And remember, when you support our sponsors, you support the podcast. Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month 5GB plan required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details.
Well, I'm curious, this has been such a life-changing experience for you. What has it been like in terms of being open about it, sharing the experience? What has that piece been like over these last 5 years?
So that's a great question, because I was really sort of torn in the beginning, because I just had a sense that there would be this backlash, that we live in this society that says your body is supposed to be a certain shape and size, but the way you come about having a body that's that certain shape and size, you're only allowed to do in certain ways. And weight loss surgery is cheating. Right? Like, and I have people in my weight loss community who have absolutely gotten that feedback. You have taken the easy way out. And now I think people taking weight loss meds are getting the same feedback.
Yep.
But here's the thing. Isn't using a dishwasher taking the easy way out instead of hand washing your dishes, driving a car? I mean, like any invention that has made our lives easier. And yet we don't put this like shame. Like you should feel bad about the fact that you use a dishwasher when you could be doing it the hard way and washing those dishes by hand. Like it's ridiculous.
Well, I also think the difference is there are people who will do everything they're quote unquote supposed to do to lose weight, eating nutritiously, exercising, and they're not. I mean, I've worked with clients who it's not as simple as calories in, calories out, like we've been led to believe. And I think the science of metabolism is incredibly complicated. And so there's this blaming of the individual that is not fair or accurate. And so then there's blaming of the individual to do something that's actually effective.
Right. And, for me, this surgery felt like such a gift because, of course, I tried all those things. And yes, the diets worked when I was young, but like I said, I gained all the weight back and then some. And then guess what? They stopped working.
Yeah.
And I think especially for women in midlife with hormones and menopause, it just becomes harder and harder as we get older. And so, yes, if we have a tool that's going to make achieving this goal more likely and more durable than the one other thing people do, which is dieting, which we know through data doesn't work. Like, you wouldn't keep getting chemo if it wasn't curing your cancer and it was making you miserable, right? Dieting can make you miserable.
Right.
And so, like, if it's not working, why keep doing it?
Right. And my concern with dieting, because it's something I struggle with when I have clients who have weight loss goals, is I get real nervous about dieting because of the restriction leading to potential disordered eating.
Right.
That continuum is easy to slip into. When I was on my psychology internship, I worked in a medical eating disorders unit for teenagers and really saw the medical consequences, very life-threatening consequences of restriction.
Absolutely.
So I worry about even just restrictive behaviors.
Well, and isn't the most robust predictor of disordered eating restriction?
Yes.
I think it is, right? And certainly anecdotally, that was my experience.
Yeah.
It was the restriction that led me to have a disordered relationship with food. There's no question. I noticed, because I was worried about backlash and all that at first, I was hesitant to talk about it. But then, what do we talk about on this podcast all the time? Psychological flexibility and values. And that's just not me. Like, for me, it's all about authenticity and openness and honesty. And so I decided to start talking about it. And yes, there were some of those people that weren't entirely supportive, but I would say the great majority, at least in my life and my experience, were supportive. Now, that said, you can drive your car 1,000 times and it only takes one accident to be scared to get behind the wheel. And so those one or two comments or lack of support can be very painful and difficult. And I will admit that I was having a conversation with a relative on FaceTime, and she told me I needed to eat a steak. And I hung up the phone and I completely spiraled. And I was just, I don't even have the words to explain it other than spiral. I was like, I spent my whole life being told that, I'm getting choked up just sharing this. Like, I've been told my whole life that I'm too fat. And now I finally do something about it. And I'm being told I'm too thin. And so what I ended up doing, instead of me recognizing that this is like a cultural and systemic issue, I assumed the problem was me. And maybe I am too thin right now, because how would I know? Like, I allowed other people to define that for me. And this is going to maybe make me sound a little crazy, but I will admit what I did was I thought about one of my girlfriends who was the same size as me, or at least I thought she was the same size as me, who I see as like very healthy. She has a healthy relationship with food, exercise, body, etc. And I basically reached out and said, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I asked her how much she weighs and what size she wears, because I thought the only way I could figure out what healthy looks like would be to get those numbers from someone.
Right.
And she was brilliant. Her response was, Jill, do you have a doctor? Like a bariatric doctor who like follows you? And I'm like, yeah, of course. And she said, well, what does he say? And I said, oh, he says I'm perfect. In fact, I just had my labs last week and he literally said they're not just good, they're perfect. And she said, okay, I think that's all you need to know.
Right.
So she did not tell me what size she wears or what she weighs.
Well, right. And that's that sort of reassurance seeking, right? That's not actually reassurance. It's this sort of grasping for what is the objective data to tell me, am I okay?
Right. And of course, like two different people can weigh the same and look different, right? So it's really not those numbers that matter. But I was so spun out after just this like lifetime of feeling like no matter what I do, I'm never enough. It makes me think of like Goldilocks, right? Like, and this is true for everyone, but especially women. We're like, women are never just right. We're too big or too small or too much or too little or whatever it is. And like, I think you see that in a lot of different spaces, but absolutely when it comes to weight and body.
Oh, right. I mean, celebrities in the public eye are the perfect emblem of this because women are criticized for being too big or too small, for losing too much weight, like Adele or Lizzo, right? When they go through significant weight changes, then they get a lot of hate. It is so confusing. And then one thing I wanted to bring up is how this relates to women in power. And I think there's sociological evidence of how in times where women are attaining more power, like in the 70s, going into the workplace with more frequency, there is an uptick, a greater emphasis on appearance and beauty standards. And it's this way of keeping women subjugated, right? And focused on what's wrong with them. And that takes energy away from their use of their strengths for power in politics, in the workplace. And I'll just reference an interview I did with Joanne Finkelstein about her book, Sexism and Sensibility, where we get more into detail about those trends. But it's how this really is about politics and power too.
Absolutely. And there's another book that I've come across. The author's Abigail Moore, and it's called Full of Power, The Relation Between Women's Growing Power and the Thin Female Beauty Ideal. And it's exactly what you're talking about. She points out this historical trend that at different eras in society where women have been gaining power, all of a sudden, like when women got the right to vote, when, the sexual revolution, when women were coming into the workplace, like there's these different metrics, guideposts. I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but like different moments in time where like, oh, women are gaining power and now Twiggy is who's popular. And women are gaining power and now Kate Moss is the most popular. And, we went through this whole phase of the Kardashians being popular, and now more and more women are rising to power. And guess what I heard? Skinny's back in again.
Yeah.
And so that has actually been shown time and time again. And it's this like patriarchal tax that we're paying that as long as we're focusing on keeping our bodies small, then we're not focusing on being big in the world with our voices and our power.
Exactly. And I think also we're using a lot of energy to try and be small, right?
Right.
We're using so much of our mental capacity and emotional energy to change our bodies that it takes away from what else we can be doing with that energy that's serving the community and our values, right?
Yeah. And so it's such a double bind. And I think part of what has come out of that is, of course, the body positivity movement.
Yep.
And I think the body positivity movement is very well intentioned. And I hope more than anything that someday we get to a point where basically people just don't give a shit about other people's bodies. Like you can be whatever size and shape you want, and it just isn't a thing. And that we can all love and accept ourselves as we are. But I do think at this particular moment in time, the body positivity moment is challenging. Because on the one hand, I'm being told I have to love myself exactly as I am. And on the other, we still live in a very, very fat phobic society. And, there's loads of research. Like, I don't just think this is true because it's my experience. Like, recent research has shown what it's like to live in our current culture in a bigger body. So some research has found that obese people are rated as lazy, unmotivated, incompetent, non-compliant, sloppy, lacking in self-discipline, and lacking in willpower. In work settings, obese people are less likely to be hired. They are wrongly perceived as less competent, and they receive lower salaries even when they work longer hours. Obese people are wrongly seen as having less leadership potential, and it's expected that they'll be less successful. In the US, the prevalence of weight discrimination has increased 66% just in the last decade. So that's at the same time as the body positivity movement.
Interesting.
And obese women are 3 times more likely to experience discrimination than obese men, especially if they're in some kind of high visibility position. That's just a couple. Like I did a search and there were thousands of additional points. So yes, if you can accept your body exactly like it is, wonderful. Like all the power to you. I'm there now. I wish I could have gotten there without having surgery, but I just couldn't.
Right.
But for me, it wasn't just about how I felt about my body, right? It wasn't like just, I hate myself because I'm fat. It was exercise is hard. Everything hurts. My cholesterol is high. Like I could kind of see myself on this trajectory of like, I'm definitely going to have type 2 diabetes in the next 2 years. And I've been trying to do this on my own and it hasn't been successful, you know? So I think even if I could have accepted my body, there were a lot of other reasons that I felt like I needed it to be smaller, if that makes sense.
It does. And I think it again speaks to, there's no one path for this or one experience. I know a lot of activists who talk about how weight and health are overly conflated in the sense that it is looking at your individual health metrics, right? Like what is your cholesterol, your glucose, what's going on with your body and health risks. It's not necessarily high weight causing those. There's a higher risk, I think, statistically, but it's not a given. So I think it's really, again, coming back to what are you going through with your body that is driving you towards making a decision about how to help your body and help your everything that goes along with that. The mind-body connection here, right? Like how...
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that's such a good point because there are plenty of skinny people who are very unhealthy.
Yes.
And plenty of fat people who are super healthy and exercise every day. And so I 100% agree that we should never be making gross generalizations about what anyone, quote unquote, should be doing, that it should be an individual choice. And then when it comes to us people being judgy about body size, it's like, to me, progress isn't actually body acceptance. Mm-hmm. Progress to me is that we all leave each other the hell alone. That like we just let adults make decisions about their bodies that are the right decisions for them. And we support them in those decisions. So if that means taking a weight loss medication or having surgery, great, good for you. How is that going? How's it been for you? Are you happy with it? Or if someone else is living in a bigger body and they're perfectly happy living in the bigger body, we say, great. Good for you. I love that for you, right? Like to me, that's progress.
Right. Which we're not there, clearly.
No, not even freaking close to
10 years
there.
have even gotten worse, right? So I think it's a lot to ask of someone to be perfectly happy in a large body with how data is showing that larger people are treated. So that's a big ask, right?
Well, and let me add to that, like one of the reasons I've been quiet about this, that it took this long for us to do an episode like this. Obviously, I said I had surgery 5 years ago. And real quick aside, we talked about whether I'm going to write another book. And I've thought about writing a book about this, like psychological flexibility for long-term maintenance in weight loss. And Yael even titled it, it's the best title, Shrink, because I'm a shrink who shrank, right? And part of the reason I have hesitated is because I'm so afraid of all the trolls. But here's the thing. It's not just trolls. Do you know how many times I went to my own doctor for something that had nothing to do with my weight? I have been for ear problems. I have been for strep throat. I have been for a cough. And they spend the entire visit talking to me about my weight. Like I've literally at the end had to be like, what about my cough? Oh, here's a prescription. In fact, I remember interviewing Julie Lithgott-Hames on POTC. And she told a story where that exact same thing happened to her in college. And so 2 of my doctors were these very kind of naturally, I assume, sort of like genetically looking skinny women. And one of them did the head tilt and said to me in this tone, I'm a physician and a mother, and I find time to exercise. So if I can do it, you can do it too.
Wow.
And this was when I was in graduate school and working, 100 hours a week.
Oh my goodness.
I had another doctor tell me, all you need to do is go vegan and just stick with it for 30 days. And apparently that was going to cure my decades of food and body image issues and like all the like psychological barriers to that. And, so it's not just trolls, right? Like, it's your own doctors that are supposed to help you. And, so I'm sure these doctors were well-meaning, but not only was I there for like strep throat and a cough, but there was nothing wrong with my health otherwise. At that time that these 2 incidents happened, I did not have high cholesterol or diabetes or anything else. The only thing was my BMI, right? But my blood pressure was low. My cholesterol was normal. Like all of those markers were fine. And they were still treating me in this way.
Yeah, there's just so much bias in healthcare. It is unfortunately very well documented. And I hear it from my own clients too. And that brings me to, my personal experience in my role as therapist is because of all this stigma and bias. If I have a client who wants to work on weight loss, I almost feel gun shy about it. I don't want to be part of reinforcing the messages that getting smaller is better. So what advice do you have for therapists since you're on both sides?
That's a great question. And I think it's really just about getting curious and like really digging into values and a person's why. And making sure that like this is something that feels intrinsically motivated. It's not a thing I'm doing for others or because others think that I should. And this other thing that just popped in my head. I had a client who came to me many years ago, and her presenting problem, what she wanted to work on in therapy, was me helping her lose weight, which was hilarious because this was before I had surgery and was really struggling in my own life. And she had all these compelling reasons why this was important. She gave me the data about how she's less like, she had been in this job. She was like this amazing woman. And she was kicking ass at her job, but she wanted to like move up and get another job. But her story was, I won't get hired because I'm fat. Mm-hmm. She was divorced and she really wanted to be dating, but nobody's going to want to date me because I'm fat. And she had the data to back it up that she is less likely to find a partner and get a job and yada, yada. But guess how long she had been telling this story that she would date as soon as she lost 50 pounds. She would try to get a job as soon as she lost 50 pounds. Guess how many years?
10.
17 years.
Oh my goodness.
17 years. So our work ended up not being about the weight loss. It ended up being about living the life that you most want to live, being the me you most want to be, even if it means doing that in the presence of all the fear and self-doubt involved with trying to get a job when you're a bigger person, trying to date when you're a bigger person. And then if there were also values around wanting to live as healthy as possible, then what are the steps and actions we can do in service of that? But like holding all of those outcomes very, very lightly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's helpful. Also, I assess for where a client is on the spectrum of disordered thinking or behavior, right? Like there's quite the continuum of just the regular sort of, that's bad food, or I'll treat myself to a cake, and kind of treating food as good or bad, which we know isn't very helpful. But then there's the real distorted thinking about food, and then really extreme restriction. And so I think it's also assessing like where is the risk, like we would with any person presenting with any issue they're coming to work on, right?
Definitely. It's an important distinction for sure.
Picture this. You scroll through social media and there it is, an ad for the action figure that your life has been missing all along. And the shopping odyssey starts. What's your login? What's your password? Wait, you forgot both? Just take my money. But sometimes, instead of that chaos, I see a purple button at the top of the payment options, and that button makes everything easier. I can just complete my checkout with a tap of one button. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US. From household names like Mattel and Heinz to brands just getting started. You can get started right away with your own design studio. With hundreds of ready-to-use templates, Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand style. Get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. See less carts go abandoned and more sales go with Shopify and their Shop Pay button. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/POTC. Go to shopify.com/POTC. That's shopify.com/POTC.
If you're a therapist like me, listen up. If you're in private practice or a group practice or thinking of starting one up, you should know about Simple Practice. Simple Practice is an all-in-one EHR that is HIPAA compliant, high-trust certified, and built specifically for therapists. I've been in private practice for about 7 years, and Simple Practice has been a lifesaver for me. It helps me streamline everything. I send each new client a link, and then Simple Practice is my portal for consent forms, billing, appointment reminders, even my telehealth video platform. It frees up admin time so I can focus on the important part, seeing my clients. And I'm not the only POTC co-host who uses it. Emily does too, and Jill uses it to manage her group practice. And if you're just starting out or growing your practice, there's also a credentialing service that takes the headache out of insurance enrollment, which will save you so much time and effort. Simple Practice is trusted by over 250,000 health and wellness professionals, and you can feel that in how thoughtfully it's built for our work. If you're ready to simplify the business side of your practice, now is the perfect time to try Simple Practice. Start with a 7-day free trial, then get 50% off your first 3 months. Just go to simplepractice.com to claim the offer. Again, that's simplepractice.com.
So I want to make sure we get to what you've actually done to be successful, because I think this will be really cool for listeners to hear who are resonating with their own personal experience, and for therapists and mental health professionals that maybe they can use in their own practice and support their clients.
Yeah, so this is one of the things that I've started doing for people in California. I can do this under the guise of therapy, but really I'm doing health coaching with people all over the world, not just this country, all over the world, that is focused not on mental health, but focused on long-term success following any kind of dramatic weight loss. And it's essentially, this is going to come as no surprise to anyone, but it's all just psychological flexibility. And it's exactly what I've been doing. Now, I'm going to walk you through some of those things. But before that, I do want to say, I don't actually know how my surgery worked to create this, but something happened when I had this surgery that it's almost like it set a reset button, where like all of my cravings and food noise and the things that made it feel impossible to diet, like to lose weight, it's like I started over from before my parents started calling me Tubby. And so I just want to say that at the outset, because I think without that reset button, that's one of the reasons maintenance following weight loss is so incredibly difficult. The internal experiences are so intense that it's really hard to respond to. And it's my understanding that weight loss medications have that same miraculous benefit. It just really reduces the food noise. I know there are people who have, again, I don't know the data, but anecdotally, I've had a lot of people tell me that they no longer want to drink or engage in other compulsive kinds of behaviors. So there's something these interventions are doing that is very powerful that doesn't happen when you're just trying to do it on your own. And the reason I bring that up is not in any way to encourage people to get surgery or take meds, but really to encourage you to be self-compassionate.
Yes.
If the weight loss and the maintenance of weight loss feels very hard. So that being said, what I start with is I borrow elements of motivational interviewing. So one of those things is a basic decisional balance where we look at kind of the pros and cons of staying the same versus changing. But then the other two things I have people do, one is I have them write a letter that starts, "Dear Food." And it's basically both a thank you and a goodbye. So it's acknowledging, what has food done for me? Because if food was really just an enemy, then we'd give it up, right?
Yeah.
But food gives people a lot. It's comfort, it's celebration, it's something to do when you're bored or angry or whatever. For me, it often prevented me from feeling feelings rather than fixing a feeling I was already having. And so it's acknowledging the function and then saying goodbye. And like what I am now ready to do, the ways in which I am no longer going to rely on you for things that you're not really meant to do for me.
For the goodbye to food, I just want to clarify that it's not goodbye to eating all food.
Oh, right. No. Actually, I think that brings up a good point that like one of the reasons this domain is so challenging for people, like think about how hard it is for people to give up drugs and alcohol, but at least those are things you can quit cold turkey. Now, I get that there's, a physiological dependence and people argue that you don't get addicted to food. But some people argue you do. But regardless, you cannot quit food cold turkey.
Right.
And so you constantly have to interact with this trigger.
And it's life sustaining.
Yes, or you will die.
Right.
Literally. Right. So no, it is not goodbye food. I'm never going to eat again or I'm going to restrict, but it's goodbye to using food in ways that no longer serve me.
Yes.
And so when I was preparing for this, I went back into my files to kind of look over and read these letters. And I had forgotten, I wrote myself another letter on my 3-year anniversary of the surgery. And it was so fun to read and just see like how I was feeling and where I was at. And I thought, oh, you know what? I think I'll write another one in March when I hit my 5 years. Because it's fun to go back and revisit.
Yeah.
So those are kind of like the original building blocks. And then we really move into a lot of acceptance and willingness, cognitive diffusion. It's all the elements of ACT. And so one of the willingness practices I do it's very challenging, but very powerful, is I have my client bring a trigger food to session. And we smell it and we look at it and we imagine like how good it feels in our mouth and how yummy it tastes and all the ways in which it functions to alleviate boredom or make us feel good or whatever it is. And then we practice willingness toward all of that, like toward the smell, but mostly toward the feelings, the thoughts, the urges, the cravings, the desire. And it's basically a mindful willingness exercise where we're changing our relationship to those feelings, right? Normally you feel a craving and you just give in. Cravings are really uncomfortable. And so you give in. What's the only thing that gets rid of a craving? Eating. Oh, but also waiting. But it's hard to wait, right? And so this is a way to engage differently with those feelings during that waiting period and to sort of see what happens. And of course, they change.
How would you define trigger food?
Anything that a person finds very difficult to resist, that is something they overeat when they don't want to overeat. If you love it and you want to overeat it and you're happy with that, by all means do it, of course, right?
Something that's causing an element of suffering.
Exactly right. Yep. And it's hard.
Yeah. Right.
It's hard.
Okay. So I love that. That's very like experiential in the room.
100%. And so then we just identify like, what are all the other forms of avoidance that are showing up in this domain? And how can we, practice confronting whatever the thoughts and feelings are that come up? Now, the other thing, so Kelly Wilson is an ACT guy who many of our listeners have probably learned from or heard of. And I was at a training with him. But at one point, he started talking about, he wrote a book that's like ACT and Psychological Flexibility, specifically for substance use issues. And it wasn't a substance use training, but he started talking about this thing, which was the role that intolerance of uncertainty plays in relapse. And the way he described it is what happens in your mind when you quit something. So let's say you quit drinking, but you're not sure if you're going to maintain your abstinence. And so what's going on in your head as you think about if you're going to drink? Your mind is going, will I, won't I, will I, won't I, will I, won't I, will I, won't I, will I, won't I.
Yeah.
And that is a very uncomfortable place to be.
Yeah.
What is the only way to stop that?
To do it.
To do it.
Right.
That's 100% right. To do it. Right. And that was such a mic drop moment for me. Like I had never thought of that before. And it's the same thing with food, right? Like, am I going to eat the pie or not eat the pie or like whatever it is? And the only way to shut that voice down is to eat it. But then of course it comes right back. And so that's a piece of what we address too, is making space for the discomfort, right? Of that comes with doubt and uncertainty and all of that. And then shifting the relationship to that story, naming the story, getting distance from the story. There's all sorts of different strategies, but it really all boils down to psychological flexibility. Who and how do you want to show up in the world? What are the thoughts and feelings that are getting in the way of that? And most of that being specific to eating in ways that I wish I didn't, like out of control sorts of ways, typically. And changing your relationship to those internal experiences so they're no longer in the driver's seat.
Do you at all address your experience with your lifetime of messaging about your weight in the therapy room? Do you get into, I was bullied as a child, or my parents always called me tubby, right? Is that part of the work?
For me, it is. It's part of the intake because I feel like those stories are really important, just to understand like where it's coming from and not so much because insight about the past is going to result in change in the present, but to figure out how is that past stuff still showing up in the present so that we can spot it. So much of our problematic behavior in any domain is being on autopilot, right? It's like, it's just reacting in ways to make ourselves more comfortable or to do, to engage in habits and whatnot. And so it's to try to get an understanding of like, where is this stuff triggering unhelpful autopilot reacting? And so that we can choose a different response. And I think it's really important that people have a witness. Like, see, I'm getting choked up just saying that. So that obviously is something that feels important to me. It's like, there's something important. Gosh, I did not expect this to like make me have so many feelings. But there's something important that I feel seen, that people understand the pain, that I wasn't fat because I was lazy and undisciplined, and all the stuff that I just cited in that research, that like this came from a pretty honest place and I really suffered. And it feels important to have that seen and heard and acknowledged by somebody else, who isn't just me.
Yeah.
And so I like to do that for other people.
I was going to say that could be a therapist, or it could be someone very loved and close to you in your life.
Yeah.
But I think therapists can serve that role. Health coach, right? In your work with health coaching, you can really see people, and that's part of the healing.
Yes. And it has been such a gift, I feel like, for me to be able to take my psychologist hat and my science-backed knowledge and everything we know about ACT and psychological flexibility and my personal experience to be able to help people who have been through. I mean, it's amazing, Emily. You would not believe how similar every person's story is. I mean, it never ceases to amaze me how often we're like, oh my God, you too? Me too. Like, that is exactly what happened. That's exactly how it was for me, And I think that like, because so many people have had experiences of skinny people telling them what they should do, that hasn't been entirely helpful, or, I think it's really beneficial to them that, yes, I have my doctoral level knowledge and I have this personal experience. So I truly, really understand where they have been, what they are going through, how difficult it is. And that I'm like one of the few people in their life that isn't blaming them for it. Like you mentioned earlier in the episode, that we treat this like it's this individual kind of problem when it's so much more complicated than that. But to also be a model, an example that like, this is something you can do and it's something you can maintain. And like, I yo-yoed for decades and I finally figured it out. So I can help you figure it out too. Like, that just feels amazing to be able to bring to people.
Yeah. I mean, it's that whole idea of using our own suffering for healing.
Yeah.
In the world.
Yeah. And I have one client who, she doesn't need me anymore. She's doing so great, but we still meet every few months because she just likes to have the check-ins and the accountability and stay on track. And plus, I will say, I think whether it's losing weight or quitting drinking or drugs or whatever, I do think there's a long period of like disbelief of like waiting for everything to fall apart any minute now. Like, I think it takes a long time to get to the point of being confident. And it's important to not be overconfident, right? Like, you still want to be aware, like, this could fall apart. You have to keep doing what you're doing.
Right.
But, she has like said to me many times, I'm so grateful I found you. I know for a fact I would never have been able to maintain this if it weren't for you. And that, like, to know that I've had that impact on even just one person feels so great. Because I know how hard her journey was to get to that place, and how painful it is every time you go back.
Right. I just think that is the perfect place to wrap up, because it's that full circle of going through your journey and experience. And now you're here sharing it on the podcast for the first time. Really.
Well, we preach psychological flexibility, and the fact that I was still hiding and treating it like a dirty little secret. Yes, I was open with my friends and loved ones, but like, there were still places that I felt scared and didn't want to share. And I decided it was time to break that and to speak up. And so if there are listeners out there who want to talk to me about any of this stuff, go to my website, jillstoddard.com, reach out. I'm happy to talk to anybody about any part of this journey.
Thank you so much, Jill, for your bravery today. And I think this is a book in your future. I'm going to plant that seed into the universe and hope that maybe this episode catapults even more of that energy towards the next book.
Maybe so. We'll see. Stay tuned.
Thanks so much, Jill.
Thank you for listening to Psychologists Off the Clock. You can now listen to our podcast ad-free by becoming a supporter on Patreon. You can link to Patreon on our website or go to patreon.com/offtheclocksite.
If you enjoy our podcast, you can help us out by leaving a review and sharing this episode with a friend or an enemy who would enjoy it.
You can get more psychology tips by subscribing to our fabulous newsletter on Substack. Or if you're still addicted to social media, find us on Instagram and LinkedIn.
We'd like to thank our rockstar production manager, Jadine Stout-Williams.
Now for the boring part. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and is not meant to be a substitute for mental health treatment. If you're looking for mental health treatment, please visit the resources page of our website, offtheclockpsych.com.